Ever since my daughter was in middle school, she gave me the nickname Podge. And ever since then, that's what my daughter calls me, that's what all of her friends call me. We were always super close, and I was really worried when she was going off to college that maybe we'd grow apart a little bit more. So I just sort of racked my brain, what could I do to try to stay as connected to her as possible? So I came up with the idea that every Sunday, I would record a 5-minute episode about the kind of topics we might normally talk about. Send it to her Monday morning, and then she could watch it on her way to campus. I thought it'd be a good idea to resurrect that. They'll be the kinds of topics that I would talk to my now 25-year-old daughter, or the younger version of myself, or people that I mentor, or maybe you. Hi everybody, welcome to the first episode of Coffee with Podge. So my wife and I are down in Turks and Caicos on a New Year's vacation, and I figured what better topic to cover for the first episode of Coffee with Podge than New Year's resolutions. So if you've ever been in a gym in the first week of January versus the first week of February, you see the enormous fall off in the people that clearly made a New Year's resolution they were going to get themselves back in shape, healthy and fit, whatever it might be. And it's easy to chalk that up to people are lazy, people don't stick with things. And while sure, to some extent that's true, I would argue a lot of it is just people have set themselves up to fail. And if they set it up better, you'd have a way higher percentage of people that are able to get to the finish line. And I think that a couple of things. One, there's a few schools that thought, some people think it's all about the goals, and that as long as you've got the right goals and discipline, that's what's going to get you there. Other people think if you've got the right processes and systems, that's going to get you the furthest down the path towards the goal that you're trying to achieve, and you shouldn't focus too much on the goal. My experience in coaching and mentoring people over 25 years is it's a mix of the two. You've got to have the right goals and the right systems to support those goals, and a whole bunch of other stuff along the way that I'm going to get into here. So the first thing is, I think people often they're not thoughtful about the goal that they pick. So, and I'm going to use this example throughout this video just because I think it will be helpful to make some of my points, is you can make the goal, I'm going to lose 40 pounds in 6 months. Now, you could take Ozempic and maybe do nothing else, and you could hit your goal of losing 40 pounds in 6 months, maybe even sooner. Problem is, you're going to maybe you'll lose 20 pounds of muscle along with 20 pounds of fat. And unfortunately, people often gain the weight back, but when you gain it back, most of it's going to be fat, and then you're worse off than you started. As opposed to maybe a more thoughtful goal is, hey, I want to get myself healthy and fit. I want to lose 40 pounds on the scale, but I want to gain 10 pounds of muscle. So I want to lose 50 pounds of fat, gain 10 pounds of muscle, lose 40 pounds on the scale. A much more thoughtful, granular goal that's getting me to something that's a little bit easier to get excited about, which is, hey, I want to be healthy and fit. I want to, not just look good, but feel good. That's a lot easier to be excited about. And, when you think about, any kind of, exciting goal, it's got to be one that's going to, push you. And like life, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Any goal worth attaining is going to be much more of a marathon and less of a sprint. So if you can't get excited about it and stay excited about it, your ability to get there diminishes by a huge percentage. So really give some thought to the goal, and until you can get yourself a goal that you're really excited about, keep rethinking it. The next thing about it is, okay, great. Now I've got my goal. How am I going to get there? What are the systems and processes I'm going to do? So, because part of what that does is if you break it down into smaller goals and processes that are going to support you. So what's my diet going to be like? How much, cardio am I going to do? How much resistance training am I going to do? How many days a week? What type? Am I going to get a trainer? All thinking through all of those things about the systems you're going to put in place to support them. And then you've got to pick some mile markers along the way to make sure that you've got some checkpoints, and I'll come back in a minute to why those are so critical, to be able to measure how you're doing. So break down those goals. So let's say as an example, as I said before, the goal is I want to lose 40 pounds in 6 months. Well, that's roughly 1.5 pounds a week. If my goal instead was I want to lose 80 pounds in 6 months, that's 3 pounds a week. And short of someone being on The Biggest Loser, where that's literally all you're doing 8 hours a day, that's not going to happen. So make sure your goals are going to push you, but they're also attainable. So hey, you break it down, you do the math. Oh shoot, that's 2.5 pounds a week. That's probably too aggressive. Let me change the number, or let me extend the period. Maybe instead of 6 months, it's 9 months. But so make sure that you've broken it down and you've really thought about the mile markers you're going to pick and the systems you're going to put in place. So my example maybe be like, I'm going to do cardio 5 days a week. 2 of the days are going to be interval workouts, because I know it's going to help me burn different kind of fat. It's going to help me build a little bit more muscle. It's going to help me stay in ketosis if I'm on a ketogenic diet, whatever it might be. I'm going to do a ketogenic diet, or I'm going to do a carnivore diet, or I'm going to go vegan, whatever it might be. Maybe you're going to measure macros instead of calories. Again, think all those things through so you've got a really good game plan, because you want to start the process where you're super confident, like, hey, logic will dictate if I'm able to execute on all these things and I'm super committed to doing it, I'm gonna get there. So the next thing about it is you've got to track the results. And I think you've got to be, in the same way that I think you need to be careful about the goal you pick, you need to be careful about what information you're going to be tracking. You don't want to get, look, some people want to, have a spreadsheet for every 15-minute increment in the day and how they're going to spend their time. Most people aren't like that. You can drive yourself crazy tracking every calorie, weighing yourself every single day, which again, on a weight loss journey, I think is probably a terrible idea. Weighing yourself weekly or even monthly makes way more sense to me. But so give some thought, not just that you're going to track your results, but what you're going to track. Because again, it's a marathon, which means you've got to be able to sustain whatever you're going to do. So counting every single calorie, everything that touches your lips, that's going to be really hard for a lot of people. And if you don't think you can sustain it, you're going to see those little mini failures as things that can really kind of chip away at your confidence, and you want to be careful about that. The other thing I would suggest that some people shy away from is not wanting to share their goals to begin with, the processes and systems they're going to use, and their progress along the way. I think that people can make the mistake, like, I don't think I'd put it on social media, where you're going to get sometimes a bunch of haters and a bunch of naysayers. Oh yeah, no one sticks with their New Year's resolution, no one ever, keeps the weight off, blah, blah, blah. Instead, pick an inner circle of 2 or 3 people that you know are always your cheerleader. When things go bad, they're there to support you. When things go well, no one's happier for you than them. Maybe pick someone that's got some domain expertise. So if you're on a health and fitness journey, one of the people that, pick someone in your inner circle that has a little bit of knowledge there that can be not just supportive emotionally, but can also be supportive with some guidance and help and trying to figure out, hey, what things should I measure? How often should I measure them? Whatever it might be. Now, no matter what you're going to do, if you picked a goal that's worthy enough, you're gonna have, and again, I want to be careful to not call them failures, let's call them shortfalls. I think that your self-talk really matters, especially when you're on a journey like this. So be careful about how you talk to yourself. But you're gonna have some shortfalls if you picked an audacious enough goal, and how you deal with those is probably gonna be a bigger factor in whether you get to the finish line than just about any other variable. So understand you're gonna have some shortfalls, and decide how you're going to diagnose those failures and figure out where did things go wrong. So hey, maybe your original game plan was you were going to work out every day from 5:30 to 7:30, and but you didn't take into account, oh shoot, we're preparing for that IPO, things are going to be way more intense at work for the next 6 months. Not the best time for that. So maybe you got to think outside the box a little bit. Maybe you put you get a treadmill for under your desk, a couple $100, and you're getting in 30,000 steps a day doing walking phone calls instead of just sitting down at your desk. So again, if you're having some shortfalls, try to diagnose those and try to come up with creative solutions trying to fix them. Try not to move the goalposts when you can avoid it. occasionally you'll have to, but when you move the goalposts, have it be because you didn't give enough thought to the journey and the timeline that, oh, you know what, maybe 2.5 pounds per week was too aggressive. So maybe you didn't figure that up front. I think it's okay to move the goalposts there when you've got new information, better information, but try not to move them just because you're not getting there. In addition to some of your failures or shortfalls, you're also going to have some successes. I do think it's important, especially with your inner circle, to share those. Again, probably wouldn't put them on social media, maybe till you get to the finish line, but pat yourself on the back quickly and then move on. Because again, it's a marathon. As I mentioned before, you're going to want to pick mile markers. And in my 6-month example, I think maybe monthly is probably the way to go. You don't want it to be too short and you don't want it to be too long, because you want it to be short enough where you're seeing the real progress, and you could draw a line from, the first 2 data points and say, oh man, if I straight line that, I'm going to get there. Or, oh shoot, I'm going to fall a little short. All right, I got to pick up the pace a little bit, whatever it might be. But that's what's going to keep you motivated. You don't want it to be too far out, because then you miss that opportunity to get yourself a little bit more excited about the progress that you're making. So pick those mile markers thoughtfully and really review and adjust at those mile markers. Yeah, you can make small adjustments maybe because you're feeling under the weather or something came up at work. You're gonna have to make those kind of game time decisions and make those short-term adjustments. But any of the bigger adjustments, try to leave those for those mile markers, those milestone dates. In my example, maybe they're monthly. Now, I think that the mistake people make when they're setting goals for themselves, especially big ones, is maybe they watched, too many David Goggins videos, and they think, not all of us are going to be able to train, basically do an ultra marathon with almost no training, broken bones in their shins and a hole in their heart. Most of us are mortal human beings, and we can be super disciplined and hardworking and dedicated to something, but we're not going to be, we're not going to be crazy like that. So I think being able to give yourself enough room to have some of those shortfalls and allow yourself to be successful, because, the tortoise does beat the hare. Sometimes slow and steady wins the race. Small incremental improvements stack up in a way that it's so easy to misunderstand. Everyone thinks that, I've got to go gung-ho and be doing, all these, hours and hours of workouts. My experience is those, that 0.25%, 0.5% improvement every few days, those things stack up over time. That's what's going to win the day. So be kind with yourself, but push yourself. Be aggressive, but when you fall a little bit short, be forgiving and just keep after it. Anyway, I hope the first episode of Coffee with Podge you found helpful, and I hope you tune in next time. Thanks, everybody.